He wasn't born into greatness. He was born into a small town where Friday nights weren't just about games, they were about survival. Around here, football wasn't a sport. It was the only way a boy could matter. His parents never knew what they were feeding. To them, it was harmless, setting up an old tackling dummy in the backyard, letting him run with older cousins who never took it easy. They thought it was play. In reality, it was initiation. At school, he was this kid who blended into the background. Not the math whiz, not the golden-armed quarterback, just another name on the roll call. But the field was different. On the field, pain translated into proof. Every bruise, every welt, every time he hit the dirt and stood up again, it all said, "I belong here." His first real injury came early. A broken arm, a bloody nose, maybe even a concussion nobody noticed. Most kids would have cried, sat out, maybe sworn off the game. He didn't. He wore it like a medal. To him, pain wasn't punishment, it was currency. Proof that he could pay the price. From the outside, he just looked like a kid chasing a ball too big for him. But if you listened closer, to the way his breath caught after every hit, to the way his eyes lit up after contact, you could hear it. The start of something louder, something heavier, a heartbeat that would only ever sync with the sound of impact. They called him the General before he even understood what the word really meant. 16 years old, still fumbling with a razor in the bathroom mirror, still scribbling half-finished homework. Yet under the Friday night lights, he was expected to command men twice his size. The helmet with the green dot was supposed to be an honor, but to him it felt like wearing a crown that never came off. From the bleachers, it looked glorious. Quarterbacks bathed in applause, receivers basked in the spotlight, cheerleaders spelled out their names letter by letter. Linebackers? Nobody spelled out his. His job was simpler, dirtier, clean up everyone else's mistakes. If the defense bent, it was on him to make sure it didn't break. He wasn't the face on the poster, he was the one holding the poster up. The coach saw it before anyone else did. Not just talent, but responsibility, stitched into his bones. That's why the dot went to him, not the fastest, not the strongest, but the one willing to take the blame, and blame came heavy. Every practice rep carried the weight of an entire family's expectations. A scholarship wasn't just for him, it was for the mortgage, the groceries, the chance to breathe. Algebra could wait, so could prom. But football couldn't. The town leaned in every Friday night like it was gospel. Floodlights lit up the field, and suddenly teenagers became saviors, gladiators in borrowed armor. The crowd roared as if victory could pay off bills, erase loneliness, heal everything this little place lacked. In that roar, he stopped being a boy. He became the spine of a team, the one who had to stand straight even when he wanted to collapse. And yet, when the lights clicked off and the bleachers emptied, he was just a kid again. Sitting alone in his room, helmet on the floor, wondering if maybe the crown on his head was heavier than his shoulders could bear. He thought college would be the reward. Instead, it was the awakening. The stadiums were cathedral-sized, the lights brighter, the crowds deafening, but behind the curtain it was business, not brotherhood. The NCAA raked in millions from TV rights, merchandise, ticket sales. The kids breaking their bodies on the field? They got cafeteria meals and a fragile scholarship, nothing more. The locker room was the strangest ecosystem. The guy who slapped your back before kickoff was the same one trying to steal your spot. Brotherhood and betrayal sat side by side, every handshake hiding a knife. Practices weren't just drills, they were auditions. You weren't competing against the other team yet. You were competing against your own blood and sweat, fighting for a slice of playing time. Off the field, the irony cut deeper. Students partied under neon lights, fell in love in dorm hallways, lived out the freedom college was supposed to promise. But for him, nights were fluorescent-lit film rooms and cold tubs. While others discovered themselves, he iced his shoulders and studied blocking schemes like scripture. Loneliness wasn't an accident. It was the cost of staying relevant. And then came the injuries. Not the cinematic kind that draw sympathy cards, but the quiet ones. Numb fingers, clicking hips, headaches that blurred into days. MRIs were postponed, painkillers were handed out like candy, and the team doctor smiled as if masking damage was part of the curriculum. Everyone knew the truth. Pain wasn't a setback. It was the tax you paid to stay on the roster. From the outside, it looked like a dream. Jersey on his back, crowds chanting, ESPN highlights. On the inside, it felt more like a debt, one he kept paying in pieces of his body, and somewhere in the back of his mind, the question flickered. If this was just the beginning, what would be left of him when the bill finally came due? The camera never finds him. It lingers on the quarterback's jawline, the wide receiver's touchdown dance, the edge rusher flexing for the crowd. The linebacker? He's in the frame only when something goes wrong. A missed gap, a blown coverage, a number circled in red on the post-game broadcast. That's the job. Carry the blame, bury the credit. The league sells itself as a dream, but for players like him it feels more like shift work. Rookie minimums, 1-year prove-it deals, contracts that vanish overnight because the salary cap demanded a sacrifice. One day you're suiting up, the next you're a line item erased from the payroll. Glory isn't guaranteed here, survival isn't either. His family doesn't get it. Over dinner, someone asks why his name never shows up on TV. You're a linebacker, right? So why don't we ever see you with the ball? He smiles politely, hides the sting, and tries to explain what it means to be the spine of a defense. But how do you explain being invisible on purpose? How do you tell them that your best plays are the ones nobody notices? And then there's the audience. They clap for the car crashes disguised as tackles, cheer for the collisions that rattle bones. They've heard of concussions, of CTE, of players who forget their children's names. Still, they rise to their feet when the sound of impact echoes through the stadium. They don't call it cruelty, they call it football. From the outside, it looks like a loop of resilience. Lace the cleats, take the field, deliver another hit. From the inside, it feels like erosion, every rep shaving years off a life that no contract will ever repay. And deep down, he knows the cruelest truth. The game that makes him matter is the same game that's making him disappear. By the time the hits stopped, the pain never did. The pills kept coming, small, white, harmless looking. Team doctors handed them out with the same ease as pregame tape. Pain wasn't treated, it was managed, masked, recycled into silence. Some players laughed about it, until silence turned into dependence. The opioid crisis didn't just hit America, it hit locker rooms first. The names of the fallen hang like warning signs. Junior Seau, hero, champion, ended his life with a bullet, his brain later dissected to reveal the damage everyone feared but nobody wanted to face. Chris Borland, barely out of his rookie year, walked away before the game could consume him, called a coward by some, a prophet by others. The old guard wore scars like medals. The new guard wondered if medals were worth the memory loss. At home, the cost was harder to hide. A wife repeating the same question because her husband forgot the answer 2 minutes ago. Children learning to read the mood in their father's eyes before they dared jump into his arms. Rage came without warning. Fatigue came without cure. The game followed them into the kitchen, into the bedroom, into every quiet moment that was supposed to be safe. And the mind? It became its own opponent. Depression, insomnia, panic attacks, phantoms born from collisions long past. Nights weren't nights anymore. They were reruns of hits replaying in his skull, jolting him awake. Doctors called it trauma. He called it Tuesday. The generations drew a sharp contrast. Legends like Ray Lewis once preached toughness, that real men never came off the field. But the new wave, Borland, younger voices, asked if survival might be the greater strength. Football worshipped toughness. The players who lived long enough began to question if that worship was a form of sacrifice. From the stands, the fans still cheered. They knew the stories, read the headlines, but still rose for every collision. They didn't call it destruction. They called it tradition. And somewhere beneath the roar, he wondered, was toughness really pride, or just another word for denial? The clip always starts the same way. A young linebacker exploding through a gap, lowering his shoulder, silencing a stadium. The crowd roars, the commentators shout his name, and then the video ends. The laptop screen goes dark, and in the reflection sits a man with stiff knees, gripping the banister like it's an opponent, hobbling down his own staircase. Yesterday's highlight reel, today's limp. Money was supposed to make it easier. Instead, it made the fall sharper. Contracts gone, investments soured, entourages long disappeared. Too many former linebackers end up broke, not because they were reckless, but because there are no playbooks for life after football. The league knows how to build you, not how to keep you standing. Some try to stay close, coaching kids, talking X's and O's on TV, but the glow never returns. It's hard to explain to a teenager at summer camp why the jersey in your closet once mattered, why you used to be the one people cheered for. Harder still when your own family asks why they never saw your name on the highlight shows. The cruelest part isn't the pain, it's the erasure. The number you wore now belongs to a rookie with fresher knees. The crowd remembers him, not you. At the grocery store, someone squints and says, "Linebacker, right? What team were you on again?" You smile, give them the answer, and watch the recognition fade before it even lands. Society calls it tradition, sacrifice for the game. But the question lingers long after the cheering stops. Was it worth it? Was the violence, the memory loss, the limp worth the fleeting applause? Or is toughness just another word for denial, another way to bury the cost under the weight of nostalgia? And in that silence, between the roar of the past and the whisper of the present, he isn't sure of the answer. Maybe nobody ever is.